Hi, welcome. My name is Cal Evans, and today my good friend, Mr. Boyd Hemphill, and I are going to talk about meaningful OKRs. Say hi to everybody, Boyd.
Howdy, y'all.
Now, Boyd, I know you, but for the audience sake, why don't you give us a quick introduction of who you are and what you're currently doing that would cause you to have to create OKRs?
Thanks, Cal. My name is Boyd Hemphill. I work at Contrast Security. My title is Director of Cloud Engineering. A little bit more than that now. OKRs are something that our VP of HR brought with him when he joined the company about 2 years ago. I'd always been curious, and that was the inspiration for me to start reading the books and beginning to understand the value of an OKR versus the more traditional management by objective or what have you.
Yeah. Or my personal favorite, management by wandering around. So anyhow,
I've been known to do that.
Yeah. So let's dive right in. I guess the first question is, we in tech throw around 3-letter acronyms all the time, but there's two here in business that are a little bit confusing. What's the difference between an OKR and a KPI?
So for me, a KPI is the KR of an OKR. So okay. OKR is objective and key result. A KPI is a key performance indicator. It's a measure. The distinction that I make, because I keep both, are KPIs are things that I use to measure ongoing efforts. For example, all the maintenance that we do, we want to make sure that we're doing enough security, enough of the things, but those aren't projects. They don't have a distinct beginning and an end. In reading the books, particularly Measure What Matters, what I found was that OKRs really have a power when you are aligned with the product team. And so you want to bring a feature to market. For example, my team right now is bringing static IPs to all of our customers. So we're bringing that feature to market. That will eventually end when we have it all rolled out and the customers have said, yay. So our key results are much more around what the business outcomes are for that project. Of course, we'll have to maintain those static IPs, and maybe we'll have some KPIs around the ongoing maintenance for years to come.
That makes sense, and that's actually an analogy or a story that I can actually relate to. So, because I've done a little bit with IP addresses, so I appreciate that. So now that you're doing this, because when you said your head of HR brought these over a couple of years ago when he came to the company, which means that you're kind of new to setting these for your team. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about that. This is obviously a lot of effort. What's the business value for OKRs? How do they help upper management keep a handle on things?
So that's an interesting question. So I'm middle management. I have been upper management. So I'm going to have to give you a bit of a muddled answer, I think.
Okay.
From my perspective, in the middle, if you will, they give me the ability to say no and mean it and make it stick. My leaders have agreed to and aligned to a certain set of OKRs. So when the good idea fairy comes along and says, bling, you should do this too, I can say, no, that will interfere with me obtaining these objectives that the business wants and hitting these key results. So from that perspective, in the middle, it really helps me remind the business, including the leadership, of the cost of changing its mind. So now that's not to say we shouldn't change our mind, but I think often without the discipline of OKRs, it's too easy to do that one more thing or not really realize what choice you're making in terms of what won't get done and the value that may have had. So that's the first thing. From a leadership perspective, especially as I've stepped up and I now have 2 managers beneath me, gaining that alignment and helping me keep them focused. For example, I have a great guy right now, but he wants to do everything all the time for everybody. And I can keep reminding him, don't forget we have this objective that we need to achieve. And that's really helped him focus. And in his sane moments, he's like, oh, thank God you're doing this because I was about to work 80 hours this week. So I truly believe that from the top on down, it brings a certain level of sanity and almost humanity back to managing business outcomes.
That excellent answer. I will have to say that I have found in most of the offices that I've worked at, the good idea is not a fairy, it's much more of a seagull. So Any.
I just thought of the Bad Company song Seagull, you know.
Okay, so you've got value for them. How do you set your OKRs for your department? Do they come down from on high? Do you write them and hand them down? Or is this a team effort where you get everybody in the room and say, we're not leaving till we've got OKRs?
So, organizationally, I believe it's a material weakness that from on high, our OKRs are not written well enough to really trickle down. So they're big ideas. So I end up doing a lot of synthesis about what that big idea might mean for the people who are doing the infrastructure work at Contrast, which is the cloud engineering team. So I have to think really hard. So what I've done over the course of about 18 months is in Confluence, I'll write out, I think this is what we should do, and I think this is who should be doing it. We have a lot of team norms, like we always work in pairs for safety and things of that nature. So I'll write out, this is what I think we should do about a month ahead of time, a month ahead of the quarter beginning. And then we have a, kind of a big brouhaha of, hey, you should reword this, or that key result doesn't really match what you're trying to accomplish and whatnot. So the team gives me a lot of feedback, which is great. You have 10 brilliant people working for you. You should listen to them. Pro tip there.
Yeah.
So they give me a lot of feedback. We keep iterating on them, and then eventually they go into our OKR tracking tool, Reflective, spelled with a K. And that's where we then are allegedly looking at them once a week during one-on-ones. It is a personal failing of mine that repeating myself is a horrible thing. And proof that God has a sense of humor, I am married to a deaf woman. So all of my repeating is done at home. So by the third or fourth one-on-one of going through OKRs, I lose track of things. I lose my will to live. So I have not done a good job managing things to that level of detail. And I believe that shows. I believe that we could be doing a better job if I could get over that personal weakness. So there's that. So that ongoing tracking. The other thing that I do, Cal, is almost like I'm going to say Six Sigma in a world of Agile, and everybody's going to go, hey! I build what I call the ghetto Gantt chart. And all it is at the beginning of the quarter, I take all that OKR thinking and I build out like a basic schedule of who's going to be what and where and when, and ask myself, are we overcommitted? And then I ask the team, are we overcommitted? And then I show the people that I work for, this is what I think we're going to do this quarter. Do you agree? And then we never update that, but we go back and we reference it. And again, when that good idea fairy comes along, I can say, this is what we committed to. It doesn't fit. So, and then, oh, well, you have two people working on this. You could surely spare one of them. No, we work in pairs for safety. Safety matters. Move along, those sorts of things. So again, that exercise of planning and stating your intention, not even necessarily what you're doing in the moment 6 weeks later, really provides a lot of discipline and power to say no for now and why, and then be able to say potentially yes and when later when you plan for the following quarter.
That leads me straight into the next question was, how often do you set your OKRs, and do you ever get halfway through and reevaluate them and say, hey, maybe we made a mistake? So
do we ever reset our OKRs? I'm sorry. So how often do we plan? Quarterly. And that's by edict. And it drives me batty because, first of all, you don't start something right at the beginning of a quarter. Second of all, a lot of things are 5 months long, not, that's why epics exist. Not 2 weeks long or, 3 months long. So the world doesn't fit into these time buckets. However, our HR team decided they wanted to do that so that they could check in with us and hold us middle management, sort of accountable to things. So while it feels a bit artificial, that's what we're doing. And quite honestly, would it be better a different way? Probably. Is it better enough to really, jump up and down and make a change? Probably not. There is no perfect system, right? So,
sure.
We'll just improve what we've got. Okay, so then changing them in the middle of a quarter, Oh, yeah. So yes, all the time, because that good idea fairy does happen. We had a huge customer come along and say, I want X. And it was a really good idea, not just for that customer, but for many other customers. And we were working on Z. And so we decided we should probably do this. So I went to my bosses and I said, we think we should do what this big customer wants sooner rather than later for these reasons. And he agreed. And so we paused the existing OKR and we wrote one and started on the new one.
Hmm.
So that's an example at the team level, if you will.
Yeah.
On an individual level, I try every quarter to get each of my people to commit to something that's personal improvement, that's also to the benefit of the company. So often this would look like, say, an AWS specialty certificate in security or network engineering or big data or something like that, or a Kubernetes certificate or something. Oftentimes they're OBE, especially in the COVID world. They just couldn't get the time they needed to do the studying, this, that, and the other thing. So oftentimes what we'll do is say, yeah, you're not going to make it this quarter. That's not on you. Let's push that out a quarter. Now if we had to push it out again, that's a more difficult conversation, but it actually hasn't happened because I'm not getting people to sign up for something they don't want to do. So, they're motivated as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's a pretty important but subtle distinction between the team OKR, because that's you and your peers holding each other accountable, and then that individual OKR. And the team ethos can almost get in the way of those individual OKRs at times.
Interesting. Now, how often do you check the progress of your KRs against the objective?
So
is this something you
ostensibly,
do it on ongoing or?
Yeah, ostensibly that would be every week with each individual. But like I said, I'm horrible at that. However, once a week, I build a table that just shows me where, what everybody's working on and what our basic progress is. And then for things that are Kanban style, I use a Kanban control chart. Jira provides that for me. It's super awesome. And then for other things, it's more just working with my Scrum Master and project manager to say, hey, are we on track? Who needs help? What sort of help do they need and why? And can we get that help, or do we need to expose a risk to the business and just say, hey, we're running late or what have you? Again, this ritual of using the OKR as a reason to check in often turns up problems that when you bring them to your business and say, hey, we're running late because we've uncovered these risks, instead of people jumping up and down going, oh my God, you didn't deliver, they're jumping up and down going, how can I help? Which is a much funner conversation to have. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, part of that's just working at contrast. It's a great culture, but I mean, ultimately, the rule is don't surprise the boss, right? So that's kind of universal.
Yep. Now, when it comes to the key results, the KRs, do you assign them to individuals or teams? Let's talk about the team ones. Do you assign these KRs and say, you're responsible for this portion of the team, the key results, or is it just organic and everybody just picks up the one they want to be responsible for?
So it's a continuum, not a black or white, and it's closer to the people choose their own adventure.
No.
However, I apologize for the background. I think somebody just scored. So what happens is at the beginning, at any point along the time where we finish a project level type thing, something that ends, we will have a reshuffle. And I have some opinions about who should be what and where, because there are certain people that have a skill set that others don't. Some people are really good planners, and some people are really good executors and horrible planners. And so making sure you've got the right pairs at the right time is a good way to go. Again, that whole safety thing, right? So from that perspective, I let people choose their own adventure, but I'm nudging them kind of where I want to go. Thus, I can't give you that black or white answer. It's sort of gray.
No, I get that. Yeah. And I to me, that's a sign of a good manager that does trust his people, that, you might be nudging them in a certain direction, but you let them come to the conclusion organically. I really like that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Now, how do you keep the OKRs in front of your developers so that they see it on a regular basis and it's not out of sight, out of mind? And again, I'm talking about the team ones, not the individual ones, because the individual ones, if it's get your Kubernetes cert, I don't think that anybody's going to lose focus on that one.
Well, like I was saying earlier, you'd be surprised because the team ones, if you've built a team that's focused on the team
Mhm.
ones often subsume that individual one. Most of the time when somebody's falling behind on an individual thing, it's because they've put the team OKR ahead of their personal one,
Mm.
which is why I'm almost always willing to grant grace on something like that. Now with the team OKRs, like I said, one-on-ones,
Mhm.
and then we have rituals built into our things that are project level. And when I say project, I mean that in a Six Sigma sense. Like it has a beginning, it has an end, it has a scope, it has schedule, it has resources. But we're managing that, executing that in a very agile way. We're straight Kanban,
Hmm.
and rather than setting Scrum increments, we just try to figure out where business value drops can be. So maybe at 3 weeks, we know we're gonna be able to give the business part of the value that it's asked for in this thing that they've asked us to do. That's a really good point for us to have a major check-in and say, how are we doing on these key results? And also to ask, do we have the right key results now that we know more about what we're trying to do? And so now we're kind of back to that agile, don't try and plan everything up front, just try and plan enough that you don't get surprised.
Hmm.
Sort of and I'm sorry, I realize I'm getting a little religious, but
It's okay.
dangerous territory, right? So there's these organic, non-regular check-ins. And then, like I said, I have the weekly ritual of checking everything and building a table for myself and saying, this is where we are. And then I have the one-on-ones that I'm supposed to be doing well that I'm not.
Interesting. Um, okay, you've been doing this for a while now. What's the one thing that has changed for the better since you started setting and tracking OKRs for your team?
Um, there are a lot of answers, but the most powerful one is when I had one of my engineers look at me and say, we need to get serious about this because it matters.
Hmm.
And I believe that was because as a team, we had been making good attempts, but not really following up like the questions you were just asking. We hadn't gotten good at that yet. That was probably our first 9 months of doing this. And he was like, we need to invest here. If we do this, we will be better at what we do. And so we took that seriously as a call to action as a group. We did start investing more in some of the things I was describing earlier, and we started seeing a bigger payoff. And so what was really amazing about the OKR adoption to me was that the individual contributors, once they understood what it was doing for them, really were bought in and wanted to drive it. And in my
Mhm.
mind, when change comes from the grassroots, that's the change that's going to stick, and it's the most powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, what was the hardest thing about getting started with this whole OKR process?
Okay, so this is where I'm going to lose my job, but okay. R. Um, so our leadership team didn't roll it out. One day there were just OKRs, and we were told to
Oh.
read the books, and we were told to like fill in these blanks in this tool called Reflective.
Mhm.
And that's not a rollout.
No.
And there were no rituals for middle management to work with upper management to say, are you doing this? Are you doing this well? And
Mhm.
so each of us was sort of left to our own devices on how to invent, track, write OKRs. And that has been super painful because what I have found is we're fairly organized and we're doing pretty well. But our our maybe a sister team, they're not so organized and they're not doing so well. And that causes us a little bit of pain because it turns out they needed us for something, didn't tell us. Now they're blocked on achieving their objective because
Mhm.
we're kind of full. It feels bad for us not to be able to help our sister team out.
Yeah.
And we've caused that trouble for other people too, right? So we're not perfect by any stretch. So that lack of a rollout, that lack of top-down alignment on something so big and systemic a change, it has really been the most difficult thing.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. Okay, one more question. Let's close it out with this. There's obviously, I'm hoping there's some manager that's listening to this going, it's been handed down to me, or we're starting to roll out for OKRs. What advice do you have for the manager that's just about to start this journey?
Oh, so given that you have the level of self-determination that I did, I would say, start small. I'm an incrementalist by nature, so my answer is going to be an incremental answer. Write one team OKR. Make sure your key results really are key results and not just, blabber. They're numeric. They're not just did I do it or not, yes or no answers. You can answer them as a percentage, ideally ongoing throughout the time that you're taking on the activity that leads to the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And get good at tracking that, and get good at talking to not necessarily your entire team, but the part of the team that's affected by that in front of the whole team. Because then because what's happening is the people that aren't directly affected are asking, well, how can I help you with that? And we can ask, how much effort did it take for you to pitch in on that objective? Because that's going to help us tune when we add a second objective. And so I was able to sort of roll this out step by step by step. And because of that, we were really able to understand our capacity and be able to effectively, again, say yes and say no. And that our ability to say no is why we're known as a team that can deliver. We don't overcommit, right? And when we say, and we can get to that in a month, people believe us because we're reasonably predictable. And that's not just great for my team, that's great for the business. That's what the business wants, is that predictability. And it's led to things that are just almost unheard of. Now, contrast is a rocket ship growing, right? But, comes along, hey, we're going to grow. How many head count do you want? I need 2 people and I need to put them in APAC. Head count sheet comes back. I have 5 positions wherever I want them. Why? We know you're going to figure out what to do with those people, which I laughed at. I was like, no, the team is going to figure out what to do with those people. And I'm just going to look good, so, but, so there are these amazing side effects if you work to get it right, rather than just, work to get it done.
On a personal note, it's always fun for me to interview people because I've been director of IT. I've been all the way up to COO, all the way down to junior programmer. And I know what a good manager looks like and what a good manager, and I've seen good and bad examples. And to hear you talk about the way that you empower your team and things like, the team's going to figure it out, tells me right off the bat, you are a great boss to work for, and your team's a very lucky team. I've seen the opposite of that. I've been part of teams that are the opposite of that, and trust me, it's no fun. But my management philosophy was always, if it goes right, it's the team. If it goes wrong, it's me. And that's my job. So when I was at that level. Hey, I want to thank you, Boyd, for taking the time to be with us today. This has been fascinating. Not only the answers you've given, but watching the sunset beautifully in Texas and the sky go from blue to a deep blue right behind you. Thank you. Please tell your kids thank you for loaning them to us, because I know you're at a soccer practice or a soccer game, and you should be a good parent paying attention. So I really appreciate your time and taking time out of your busy schedule for this meeting. Audience, thank you for joining us. I hope you have found this enjoyable. Hey, if you've liked this, please do me a favor. Make sure you tell Gun.io that you like this. That way they'll let me keep doing this, because I really enjoy doing this. This beats working any day of the week. So tell them that you like this. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.